Okay. Okay. All jokes aside, though, let's dive into this one. This is Katatonia with their latest release, Nightmares, as extensions of the waking state. So, Katatonia getting their start in the early '90s. I feel like these guys were pioneers in the more atmospheric death metal, genre, getting their start in Sweden, putting out their first album of Dance of December Souls in '93. And I mean, they were doing things that not a whole lot of other bands were doing. I first heard about these guys very late in the game, if I'm being perfectly honest, and I know that's that is what it is. Yeah, Dead End Kings was the ninth album from them, and that was my first introduction to them. And at that time of my life, I needed something like this. It's very moody, very atmospheric, very like, geez, shucks, things sure are bad, eh? And I kind of needed something like that. And I just felt like since then, though, I've been kind of less than excited about their releases. Fall of the Hearts, City Burials, and Sky Void of Stars didn't really do too much for me, and it was more of the albums from their past that I dipped my toe into that I found I liked more. And wouldn't you know, one of my favorite musicians of all time, Michael Eckefelt, had a little bit of a 10-year with the band between 96 and 97, doing some work with Brave Murder Day and Discouraged Ones, their 96 and 98 release. Now, one of the things that brought me to this band that I was really excited for was kind of the change up of personnel that we found on here, right? So the band kind of grew as Jonas Jonas on lead vocals and lead guitars, as well as Ander Nostrom on guitars, backing vocals, keyboards. Anders is gone. So this kind of 1-2 duo punch that was with the group right from the beginning, right from the inception, had finally left. And I thought that this kind of change up, this kind of personnel change would provide a little bit more new blood, because we actually have two individuals coming in to fill his spot, Nico Elstrand and Sebastian Svaldland. And I'm so sorry to both of you for butchering those pronunciations. Yeah, both of them are providing backing vocals and guitars, which now means we've got kind of like a 3-part harmony within the vocal works that I was really excited to dive into, as well as not only within the vocal works, but also within the guitars. Having 3 guitarists could help elevate and really puncture a lot of the kind of stay power. And I will admit, this album did a little bit of a bait and switch for me. The first 2 tracks, Thrice and Liquid Eyes, really got me excited. They were punchy. They were a little bit more immediate. It wasn't just atmosphere over substance that I felt like both City Burials as well as their past album, Sky Void of Stars, were. Because I did feel as if both of those were... I'm going to be a little bit harsh here. They were a little bit of a snooze fest. They were much more atmosphere over substance. And here I was being proved wrong. The 3 guitars really battling it out and really constructing some meaty and dense, style of this kind of metal music. Unfortunately, once we got to Wind of No Change and Lilac, I was like, oh, we're sliding back into the territory that I'm not all that excited for. There's a lot more atmosphere. It was feeling a little bit more moody and melodramatic. And I know that's that's Katatonia's whole bag, but I want that to be the foundation for them to then build on top of. I want those really soaring, chuggy guitars. I want that really powerful and gut punch style of lyrics. And I just felt like this wasn't quite there. And then the trend, unfortunately, continues on from there. Temporal, Departure Trails, and Warden are very much kind of same. I don't feel like we're getting too much departure of that initial root sound. And this was where I was really hoping that those new members would help fill out. And unfortunately, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling that excitement that I used to feel for Katatonia, which is really saying something. Katatonia is catatonic at times, hence the name. But, at least they had some oomph. They had some punch. They had some stay power. And I'm not feeling that here. You know, the vibes are a little off in that case. Really, it wasn't until we got to The Light Which I Bleed and After Solon that I feel a little bit more invested in this. We have a little bit more of a dynamic punch. You know, this is where those 3-part harmonies within the vocal works, as well as within the guitars, are starting to do their job. You know, they're starting to punch that melodrama. We're feeling that sorrow. We're feeling that oomph. Like, to capture the type of sorrow that Katatonia is really good at, you need that emotion. And up until that point, I wasn't really feeling the emotion. I was just feeling kind of blah and kind of lacklustered, and I wanted more of that oomph. And sadly, I feel like the final track of In the Event Of tries its best to wrap this album up, but it doesn't quite get there. Like, even with that great play out, like, I love when the drumming is soaring. You know, the drum works on this are, you know, almost second to none, but it just doesn't have that energy that's behind it, you know, and I can tell they're trying their best, but it just, I felt like it was not that bombastic ending that I was really hoping that they were channeling. Yeah, unfortunately, I was a little disappointed, and I know that's more on me. You know, I know that's more on me because I was really hoping for a little bit more of an oomph on this one. But maybe I'm just not cut out for Katatonia. You know, maybe that couple of albums that I really liked, like the Dead End Kings, and then the handful of albums like Brave Murder Day and the Discouraged ones, maybe those were just flash in the pans for me, and the rest of the Katatonia discography is just, it's not, maybe not my taste. You know, I like a little bit more dynamics. I like a little bit more of an ebb and flow. I like my build-ups and payoffs. And whereas other bands have been able to capture this kind of flavor, like I'm thinking of Infinite Granite from Deaf Heaven Behind Me, or like a Meliora from Leprous, I'm just not feeling it on this one. And that's just a me problem. You know, that's just a me problem. So, yeah, in the end, I will say Nightmares as Extensions of the Waking State by Katatonia is one that I would ultimately skip. It's a little bit of a shame, you know? Like, if you're a fan of the band, I would recommend checking this one out. If you're not a fan of the band, I would honestly point you to Dead End Kings, or even go back to their 90s stuff. So that's what I've got for Nightmares as Extensions of the Waking State by Katatonia. What do you guys think about this album? I'm really excited to hear what other people think about this one. I know some people love it. I know some people hate it. I know some people are kind of square in the middle. I'm not quite into the whole, like, hating it moment. Like, I do think that there are moments on this album, as I mentioned, Thrice and The Liquid Eye, as well as After Solon, that hold some of Katatonia's best music within the past 15 years. It's just a shame that it's being dragged down by some of their least exciting music that I've heard so far. So I want to know what your thoughts about this whole thing is. If you loved it, if you hate it, by commenting down below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. I'm trying to get to 18K. My goal by the end of the year is to have 20,000 subscribers on my channel. And every little subscription helps. So please do that. There's a little button down below. I think it's about like right over there. Consider giving that a subscribe. And yeah, I think that's where I'm going to leave you guys for today. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.